We are here today to talk about all the things related to boxing and Parkinson's. We're going to talk about what is boxing for people with Parkinson's, like what a class might look like. If you're new and boxing curious, we're going to talk about the research that's been done, some of the research that hasn't been done, research on in the pipeline, and all of the things that you would help you if you're just getting started or you want to get even more out of boxing. My name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education and Research at the Davis-Phinney Foundation. I am here with Josefa Domingos. She is a member of our Science Advisory Board, and John Dean, who is also a member of our Science Advisory Board, and they are married. Hello, we're so glad to have both of you here, and they're calling. And Sara Rigarre, who is from Sweden, and she's calling in from Sweden, and she's done a lot of work in this world of boxing and Parkinson's. So she's gonna have a lot to share. We're really excited to share that work. I wanna thank our peak partner sponsors, Adamas, Amneal, Kira Kiran, and Synovian for making it possible for us to deliver these really great webinars to our community for free. Thank you so much for your support of our work. Okay, I'm excited to get started. I would love for you guys, for the three of you to introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you work, and how you got involved or interested in the world of boxing and Parkinson's. I know that it's not the only thing that all of you do, but sort of where your interest comes with that. So Josefa, let's start with you.
Okay, hi everyone. Very excited to do this topic as we can see all the responses. So I'm a physiotherapist that's specializing in Parkinson, and I'm working at the Portuguese Parkinson Association in Portugal. I do travel and obviously have the international connections because I think it's very interesting if you're working only in Parkinson that you know what's happening in the world. I would say that my boxing came into my life in a very particular and funny story, which is I actually had an argument with my former boss. So I go down to the gym and I was so irritated that I started punching the equipment that we just bought, right? So, and suddenly it hit me. It was like my aha moment for boxing. It's like, wow, this is such a cueing kind of training strategy, right? So it's like, I just immediately fell in love with it. So I think in terms of how it can help me as a physiotherapist in what I'm already doing, it's really interesting. So I'm happy to share those experiences with you.
Excellent, thanks. John.
So I'm John Dean, and I'm a speech language pathologist, and I also specialize in Parkinson's. I split my time between the States and Lisbon with my wife, and I remember the first time I saw or heard anything about boxing up close. I had been aware of the Rocksteady program, but Rick Schwartz, who was on the board at the Parkinson Association of the Rockies, was talking about walking out the door from a meeting saying, I'm going to go work with my boxing instructor. And a couple months later, that turned into a class that we all went to on Saturdays with Anthony Mora, and just started growing it from there. And it turned into a program that's actually locally pretty popular in the Colorado area. A lot of our people we know teach it. And it's been great. I do agree. It's a very great motivational, and it's good cueing, and there's a lot to it. So we enjoy it a lot. It's not all we do, but we enjoy it a lot.
Great. Thanks, John. Sara.
Yeah, so I'm a person with Parkinson's disease, and I've had Parkinson's for over 35 years. I had my first symptoms in my early teens, around age 13 in 1984, and I turned 50 in February. So I've been having it for a long time. And I met John and Josefa. I actually don't remember who I met first, but around 2013, 2014, somewhere in different meetings. And
WPC for me
in Montreal. Yeah, so that was 2013. Yeah, and that's also actually where I tried boxing for the first time for Parkinson's, because the Rocksteady boxing people were there, and so that was fun. And I wanted to. I live in Stockholm, Sweden, and I wanted to start having boxing here as well, but there wasn't anyone doing boxing for Parkinson's. So I sort of lost hope a bit, but then one of the boxing clubs in Stockholm actually contacted me or via the Parkinson's Association. I wanted to get a boxing class started, and so I contacted Josefa and said, "Why don't you come over here? We'll teach them how to do it." Actually, before then, I had been to some rock steady boxing classes on my travels. I've been to one in San Francisco a few times. It was really, really fun.
Okay, great. Before we get too far into the research, I'd love to help set the stage for people who are curious about boxing. It's something that maybe their support people in their support group, their friends have talked to them about. They go to Rock Steady Boxing or another boxing class during the week, and they're curious, but they don't know what to expect. Can you talk a little bit about what is it, I don't want to say like level, but like, should somebody be in good shape? Does it matter? Is it all levels? What happens when you walk in the door? What does a typical class look like? And yeah, let's just start with that. Does somebody want to jump in? Somebody who kind of loves talking about that piece.
Yeah, I wonder if Sarah, if you want to explore maybe what took you to the boxing and when you did your first class, because I think all three of us will have different experiences on that, and then I might build on it.
Sure. So what attracted me to boxing is the craziness about it, really. I mean, it's so counterintuitive. You get Parkinson's from boxing. So why would you do boxing for Parkinson's? And just the sense of doing something that's not expected from a person with Parkinson's. So it actually, and I've heard that from many people saying, when I'm doing boxing, I don't have Parkinson's, I'm a fighter. So it changes the mindset. It really does, because if you get the confidence to achieve something that you didn't think you would be able to achieve, you grow.
Right.
So that's what attracted me, the sort of the contrast of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'd never heard of that before. So what is a class like when you walk in, you're somebody with Parkinson's? Let's say you walk in and you're alone. You are going into a gym for the first time. What is likely to happen?
So for me, it's been very different in different places. So my first take would be, you need to find a trainer that knows a bit about Parkinson's. Otherwise, it won't be any good. They also need to know a bit about boxing, but it's more important that they know about Parkinson's than they know about boxing, because boxing they can learn. Parkinson's is more difficult to understand, I think, if you don't have a background in physiotherapy or similar. What would you say about that, Josefa?
Yeah, because what I'm wondering is like I'm already biased by what I've learned from these experiences in the way I'm doing it now. So it might not be the typical class, right? So if we go to, I would say the only research that we have a 15-minute warm-up that's usually based off movement and stretching. So for people to get an idea of what would happen. And then you have circuit training where people go around in different stations doing exercises. And then you have about 15 or 20 minutes of cool down. This is usually the normal format of a boxing class. And I would say I'm biased by the experiences that I've had. I tend to see that the places and the research that we did, we actually found out that the part of the classes that people liked most was actually the warm-up and the cool down, which is actually an interesting discovery, because like what's happening there? Oh, that's the moment where they're all together, right? So it's really the group is the glue, right? The bonding, and that's where you're all going through it together. So what I've done with that knowledge is basically the section of boxing that I'll do will also be in a group, which makes it really hard on me, right? Because of course I have smaller groups, and I think that's the differences. It really depends. What happens in a class really depends on the people that are doing it, the instructor, the knowledge that they have, and their goals.
Right.
But,
so one real specific question. Some people ask, does it hurt? So can you talk a little bit about, is it contact? Are you punching a bag? Are you punching another person? What's happening in the class specifically?
So you're never punching another person. You're punching against their sort of mittens, or in some cases, but not against other people with Parkinson's, because then things might happen. So you punch the sort of this whatever they call it in English. I don't know what they call it in English.
pads?
Or pads, right? that other people hold for, not other people Parkinson's, because then.
So you're punching the coach's hands
Yeah, and bags as well.
or the bag. Okay, so this is great.
Yeah,
Um,
and the air, of course. I mean, punching air is also fine.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shadow
Great.
boxing.
Shadow boxing.
Shadow boxing, yeah, right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure people are wonder, have asked, does it hurt?
Yeah, yeah.
I can comment on that, which is if you have those true boxing, boxing club, which was the example of the program that we implemented, the boxing bags are really hard, and so they might hurt.
Mhm.
So it's not supposed to. No therapy, no exercise supposed to hurt, right? So we must be mindful of that.
Except afterwards.
Right.
Well, it depends on what type of hurt, like usually there's a difference of arm injuries and hands.
Yeah.
That's
Muscle
not
soreness is fine. Muscle soreness is fine.
So I would say, so we actually saw what people preferred, and the pads were the preferred ones because the instructor can meet you halfway. So you actually think you really punched really hard, but you can engage people, and even if people are having a lot of difficulty, and to not get frustrated, we can meet them halfway. So even like situations of MSA or other Parkinsonisms,
Right.
with more incapacity, we can motivate them with boxing.
Okay. So one of the things that I want to over 3 years ago when I joined the foundation, the first Parkinson's class I went to was a boxing class at the corner boxing gym in Boulder. And I was amazed. I was like, oh gosh, this is incredible. One of the things I noticed though was that there were a lot of volunteers there. So a lot of the people who went to go take the class, their care partners came with them, their sons, daughters, whatever, and then they were volunteering in the class. They were helping people put their gloves on. They were, letting people punch them. Is this something that's normal in boxing classes, everywhere? Because I just imagine somebody going by themselves and being like, how am I going to manage all of that stuff if I have difficulty? So can you talk a little bit about that?
So the club in Stockholm actually is a regular boxing club, but they had started with something they called the Grey Panther. So they had over 60 boxing for non-Parkinson's people. So then they want to start Parkinson's boxing, and then these Grey Panthers actually are the volunteers in the Parkinson's class. So some of them are sort of extra coaches and help with that. So that they then learn pretty much. They learn a lot about Parkinson's while doing it as well.
So in a rock steady boxing class, are there typically a coach and like volunteers, or is it usually just a coach and a class?
We got to be careful because I'm not trained in Rocksteady. But what I've seen, I think they do have a lot of help in the same way that the center boxing. I have to say, I went to that boxing program quite a few times back when I was living in Boulder, and I think they're pedagogical. Their training and instruction is quite solid.
Yeah.
But they do need to have a lot of volunteers to be able to handle the quantity of people, and some people need additional attention.
Great.
So yes, it's a big part of that, I think. We definitely had it down at Power Punch, but down at Denver Shield down in Denver.
Yeah, one of the coaches says our Rocksteady classes, we split our groups into 2 levels, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I guess it's going to depend. I just wanted to make it, accessible for people who are curious about it and to give them all information we can. So you'll be taken care of. If you're going to a Rocksteady boxing class, the chances of that you're going to be taken care of and they're going to be aware of your level and they're not going to push you too hard. Is really important. We're going to talk a little bit about safety a little later on, and we're also going to share some tips on how to make sure that you're vetting the place that you go so that you feel safe and it's a safe environment. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the questions that you can ask the trainers to make sure that you're in the right place.
And if you want to see what it looks like, you can check Josefa's background when she's in the spotlight, because those are pictures from the boxing class in Stockholm.
Great.
Boxing. It has an extra N in there where it doesn't belong in English, but the boxing club.
Somebody asked if you need your own gloves or other equipment, or is this typically something that are at the gyms for people?
I would probably suggest that I'm sure the boxing clubs have them, but if you go once, you try it and you like it and you're going to stay, I would probably recommend in terms of hygiene and safety, that you have your own. If I don't know how much they cost in the US, but I'm sure it's feasible to buy one. I usually tell my people that I work with to buy theirs.
Yes. Okay, great. Let's talk a little
You're
bit
supposed to
about,
bring your own wraps.
right.
The little wraps. You're supposed to have those of your own, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the benefits to motor and non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's. And if you could speak a little bit to dystonia, and a lot of people have talked about how they have such terrible cramping that in their hands and feet that this just seems really difficult. So can you talk a little bit about those benefits and then some of the things to look out for?
So we would be referring to the fact that they do it and then they have these cramps, just to clarify.
Yeah, part of it is the cramps getting in the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine that whatever you're going to do in the boxing club has to mimic something that you're going to do in daily life, right? So it's like if you're going to walk, you're going to sit and stand, you are using your arms, and if that brings on the dystonia. So I think it really deserves an assessment on its own to understand in what situations does it come on, right? And then it's distinguished between, dystonia is a complex. It can be morning dystonia, right? It can be exercise induced. So is it after? So I'm not sure if I can answer. And what we know is from subjective reports that their tremor tend to decrease, but there's no official publication on that, results on that. And this might be an influence maybe on the information that we are receiving in our hands and have an influence that might also, I would say, have some influence over dystonia, but unless we have no data on it, so I can't really base that on any experience as well. I think if I had someone that was cramping up, I probably wouldn't be boxing with that person. I'd probably try something else. But, working in this area, you get surprised. So I never like to say no without trying.
And also it can be related to, if you improve medication, you might be able to reduce the cramps, and then you might be able to go boxing. So it's a mix of everything, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about some of the benefits.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Which is the most important factor for doing it, for doing it, for staying with it.
And I think grabbing onto the fun, actually, the fun means that you will do it ongoing. And what I like about the boxing, it's actually a nice ongoing strategy for exercise. It motivates people to continue exercising. Because we know that people can have periods of rehabilitation, physiotherapy, speech therapy, but we need people to be able to continue active in their communities, close to their homes. Because one of the barriers of people dropping out from any exercise is if it's too far away from their houses, right? And this is actually the solution that Sarah was finding, an ongoing program that she needed to do exercise. So I think that's the best benefit of it. What we need to realize is how can we make it better so that we also have clinical benefits, right? And clinical benefits that have been shown in one RCT only, as we were talking earlier. The research is still not there. That doesn't mean it won't have benefits, but we can't prove it yet in terms of clinical studies, but they are coming. And I would say the benefit would be obviously over the aerobic component was the strongest benefit that we saw. So the fatigue, greater improvement in endurance, and you can see the component of how boxing is so aerobic, right?
Right.
But it grabs onto everything. It grabs onto the aerobic component. It grabs onto the balance as well, because you're challenged at all times of changing directions as well. The transfers. Negotiating all these busy environments. The dual tasking is obviously very present in the boxing. That's also one of the great reasons why I like it. And then the overall benefit of the ongoing exercise will probably have some connection with the non-motor symptoms like sleep and so on.
Right. Sarah, can you talk about that research, the RCT, the one that we were talking about? Can you give a little bit of background, what it was, who was in the study, and what
I don't think I know about that study in particular, but Josefa and I have been we did a small study out of the program in Stockholm that we started. So it's more of a pilot or a feasibility study.
Okay, can you talk about that?
Sure, Josefa, you'll have to fill in because I probably don't. But it was based on assessments that we did prior to starting, as well as follow up to see the feasibility and the acceptability of the program in the community-based program. I think we had about 25 people participating.
Yeah, 26 people that registered for the workshop. So we had 2 sections, which was the workshop, which was the teaching component, and the study was about implementation of the program, so testing feasibility and satisfaction. And the one that I was mentioning before was actually the first RCT that was published by COMS in 2013. So it's the only record we have at this moment.
Yeah.
Stephanie Combs.
Stephanie Combs, okay. And then we did an implementation study. So it was really to highlight these type of components, these questions of do people, why do they register? What needs in terms of educational needs do the boxing trainers need? The amount of people that would register, the adherence. We had the outcomes were more subjective in terms of that. So it's our focus was really how to implement it and give it as an example, and also create some educational tools that come along with the paper. And I think that's probably the most important contribution of this paper, is the outline where we make some recommendations about who you should be choosing, things that you should be adapting in boxing, identifying red flags, identifying fluctuations. So if somebody comes in and they have an off period, what are you going to do? You're going to send them home? So how are we going to manage these situations? How to help someone to get out of the off period, to assess it, to understand if it's medication related, if it's just anxiety related, and then maybe use some strategies to bypass that. So this is all components that are in an outline that comes with the paper. And I think if people are interested in it, I think it was a positive contribution.
And that program is still ongoing in Stockholm, as well as it has spread to, I think, at least 20 other places in Sweden. So it's really taken off.
Great. We will share that paper with everybody too. So Josefa, can you talk a little bit about the RCT? Do you have information about that you can share?
Oh, yes, I think, anyone that's the first publisher on any area is really breaking ground there. So they have the merit of always being the first to be able to prove that we're not all mad that everybody likes this. And the first time I discussed this with the neurologist, he literally looked at me like I was mad, because I was talking about boxing, and obviously boxing is associated to violence. And so people tend to look at it, and I think there's still a resistance in bringing it maybe into the scientific world because of that. But because people are enjoying it so much, this making a lot of noise, right? So I think now there is a clear need that we need more research in it so that we can improve these programs. So that first study, it was also in a community setting, but they actually they did a pilot study with 6 people in 2011, and then in 2013 they did the RCT, which is very excellent work in terms of piloting and then doing it more effectively. And what they were comparing it to university, so people would be at the community boxing gym, or they would be comparing with the group that was under supervision of a physiotherapist and students at the university. What was interesting about this, obviously both groups improved in terms of outcomes, of balance, of endurance as well, step size, walking parameters, these whole outcomes that they assessed. But what was interesting to highlight here is balance confidence was actually greater in the group that did the physiotherapy supervised program.
The balance confidence in their balance?
Yes, because the program had a component where it focused a lot about bypassing obstacles. So people clearly understood that they were training balance. So there's an influence if you think that you're training balance and if you're not. So
interesting.
It was an interesting result, but both programs had benefits. The boxing program showed a little bit more benefit. It wasn't clinically significant, but it showed improvement in terms of the endurance and the aerobics. So that's where it won more. So when you're looking for a program, it's really deciding on what you are looking for, which area or which domain are you looking for flexibility? You're not going to go to boxing, right? If you're looking for aerobic component, if you're looking more for, for balance. And this actually guided to one of the studies that I'm currently doing. It's we're writing up the paper, and where we're comparing boxing. I do my PhDs on community-based therapy and implementing these programs at Radboud University in Nijmegen. And so one of the studies that we are doing at this moment was to compare if we added in the kicking, if that would increase this perception that you are training balance, right? And the results were negative. So it was the same. So adding in the kicking or not kicking, basically we had the same results in terms of balance outcome. So it's
mixed martial arts coming. No MMA cage fighting for Parkinson's.
We're all desperate to find things for falling, right? So it's the balance relating directly to falling.
So part of that random control trial, how many classes a week were the participants taking, and how long was the duration of the study?
So they did 24 sessions, which was, if I'm not in error, twice a week. And so 24 sessions for 18 months? I'm sorry, I can't recall now.
Twice a week, it will be 4 months.
12 weeks.
3 months.
Yeah.
3 months,
Yeah,
exactly, 3 months, which is common. And then, but I think the intensity really depends on how people are combining it with whatever programs they're doing as well.
Right. And so, I mean, for most people, this is a complementary to other things that they're doing, whether they're doing cycling or yoga, dancing, other things like that. Somebody in the chat had said, somebody who I believe is a Rock City boxing coach said that 3 sessions is sort of the suggested 3 sessions a week. I think that obviously depends on where you live. If you have access to 3 sessions a week, a lot of times, a boxing gym will have a couple of classes a week. They won't have 3, but certainly, something to try out. I think that I asked this question earlier. I'd love for you guys to address it because I think people are curious about it. We see a lot of research on lots of other exercise related to Parkinson's. What do you think is holding up the research on boxing and Parkinson's?
So doing randomized control studies on research on exercise is really, really, really hard, because how can you know that people aren't doing other stuff? And if people are in a study that assesses exercise, they will do more exercise than they would if they weren't in the study anyway. So it's really hard to do randomized control studies. And for boxing specifically, for exercise, and for boxing specifically, I think that there is some hesitation as to safety, I think, in most cases. And I think in some cases it can be justified, but as long as it's perfectly feasible to do it in a safe and sort of environment in a safe way. So there's a hesitance because it's new as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. A lot of people in the chat have said that, my Rock Steady Boxing gym customizes to individual needs. They do assessments, before the classes to make sure everybody's there. One of you mentioned, I think it was you, Josefa, you talked about what to do if somebody walks into your gym and they're off, and they're really, maybe they got into the car and they were feeling fine, and then they got to the gym and they're really feeling off. What are some things that you do in a class when somebody's has that situation?
Yeah. So because I'm using this format where we are all together in every activity that we do, I probably manage it differently, right? Because if you have groups and you're organizing people in circuits, then maybe you will probably have someone that can be with that person for a while. And I think the simplest way to handle it is to ask the person how he usually does handle it in his daily life. And that will guide you because they do deal with it daily, right? And then if in the format that I'm using, everyone is aware that we all have, that everyone has Parkinson, and we are very complex, maybe I'm using the wrong word, we're solidarity to each other. And so if someone is not feeling so well, we might change the exercise. So I automatically change the exercise. So maybe I can sit down and do some boxing or change it, or walking. Sometimes walking alleviates, I would say, off if it's related to anxiety. So just relax, let's walk, everybody, let's walk. So I'll change the exercise without even highlighting that person is in off. But that's because I know the group really well, because it's a group of 8 people max. So, and I can see that maybe sometimes we are boxing and the person is having more difficulty than usual. He's becoming slower. I can see that he's probably having back pain. And so I'll change the exercise again up, so maybe 1, 2, up, so that rotating. So I'm addressing that problem without highlighting that he's having a problem.
That's great. And you did speak to something about sitting. Somebody, you can do this in a wheelchair, right? There were a lot of people at the classes in a wheelchair, and you can box, with your hands, and your instructor should be able to, especially a Rock Steady boxing instructor is understanding that people have mobility issues and they might need to be sitting down in boxing, and that's definitely possible to do. John.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if someone is coming in sitting, and so you have specific goals about, being able to be mobile in your chair, I would imagine that's one of the goals that the person wants to achieve. So using the boxing is actually quite clever if you use the pads, right? So because if you are in normal rehab, people will have you reach out for things so that you can train your trunk mobility, and this is what you'll do, right? So if you're punching out, you are just cueing that person to also do it with more effort. So that's the additional benefit of using the boxing in that type of situation, being that most of the, I would say, recommendations is to use the boxing with early stage more.
Got it.
Yeah.
So John, one of the things that you're really involved with is dual tasking and cognition, and how exercise can sort of improve cognition. Can you talk a little bit about how boxing does that, and what what you do in terms of that you could incorporate dual tasking into a boxing?
Well, it's interesting because I think Josefa just highlighted something very, very interesting in that respect, because I think the way that the dual tasking happens, at least in the sessions that I do with her, a lot of times she's looking at the goals, and these are people that she knows well, and she might modify it on the fly. So she'll have somebody that will have somebody who comes in and they're starting to have trouble, and instead of highlighting, like, you need to have this change and we're going to do this, well, she'll make a new dual task, little activity out of it, without being like, oh, you're having trouble with that. And I think the ways that we incorporate, we obviously use a lot more voice. I'm a speech therapist, so we like to do that, and we use that either to put the framework that we would do another dual task that would be boxing related, whether you're sequencing or counting or highlighting this. I'm trying to think of some of the better videos I've seen Josefa do, where she had someone, I remember the older gentleman sitting and standing and hitting this bag that she put on the wall, and then going through 2 different words. So she's basically doing a trail making test, but it's trail making with 2 different words, so we're not burning you next time you go to your neuropsychologist to get tested, so that we're not getting in trouble with that. But those are the kind of things that you can do, and it's not a very traditional approach. I think people would be when they would see one of our classes, it's not going to look at all like even what we did at Denver Red Shield with Power Punch, let alone Rock Steady, or some of the many other branded approaches. There's a whole, Josefa got trained in Boxercise in Germany, I believe. There's a number of ones around there, and I don't think it would quite look like that. Mm-hmm. So use of voice, use of the way that we do some of the sequencing. But again, I see with Josefa, it's always a framework that she can apply to whatever situation. We could be swimming and dual tasking is going to happen. We could be skydiving, and it's like dual tasking is going to be happening.
I can add that it's a way to bring people together. So if you do have someone that's struggling, it's like, okay, now we're going to focus on our voices. And so if you're sitting down and it's like, this is boo, this is stop, boo, stop, whatever, so it's, you distract people quickly into something else. Sarah has that experience. So it's like,
we were doing something with a speed
bag. I think, Sarah, your experience with dealing with freezing and boxing, the experiences that we did was very interesting.
Yeah. So I would say that for boxing, I would say if you're interested in boxing for Parkinson, I would say you should find a Rock Steady boxing person trained in that if you're after the specific boxing. But as Josefa and John says, there are many approaches to exercise, and the best thing is to mix it up, I say. And with boxing, my freezing has been a challenge for sure. And Josefa has been helping me finding different ways to deal with that, and that has been successful.
Great. I know that is a big issue for our community. Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like in your boxing classes when you were freezing, and then what are some of the strategies that you tried to?
Yeah, so freezing is a very personal concept as well. Freezing can look very different to different people. For me, my freezing is very much related to anxiety and sort of these kind of emotional sort of freezing I have a lot. So and that's something that happens if something unexpected happens, an unexpected sound, an unexpected movement, and very frustratingly, even sometimes an unexpected thought in my own head, which is extremely difficult to be prepared for. So I need to find ways of dealing. Sorry?
Can I interrupt you to give an example of, do you remember the story of 3?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell it? Or
no, you do. You go ahead.
We had numbers on our boxing bags, and there was 1, there was 2, there was 4, and then suddenly Sarah comes into the gym and she's like, "Where's 3? Where's 3?" And she's having this. So just that thought was enough to bring on.
And there's a very funny video as well of me running on a treadmill in the gym. Well, yeah. But so I actually can't run. I can't run on flat ground, but I can run on a treadmill, which is a bit of a mystery as well. But it makes sense for me. But I wouldn't have guessed it before Josefa challenged me to do it. So that's also encouraging for me to know that I can do it, and trying to understand the implications and what the mechanics with that is. And that's actually a challenge for me with these floors in boxing gyms, because they're often sort of sticky in a bit, which makes it more more prone to freezing actually, which is something I need to think about. But there's a lot of things with boxing, because if you go to a place where the boxing is stronger than the knowledge of Parkinson's, they will often stress the fact that you should have a proper boxing stance, which is then the same foot forward all the time, which can be the wrong foot forward for some people with Parkinson's if their other side is more affected. So that's something that's worth checking for if you're shopping around for a class to join, how adapted they are to people's individual needs and challenges.
Great.
I think that's a good point, Sarah, because our professional convictions, which we can understand that we all take our courses and our educational, and then we know what we know, right? And so sometimes to let that go so that we can be open to listening to people is critical for this. It's I think even things like posture, like the crunched posture in boxing, that I know that all the physiotherapists will, we look at that. Right?
Yeah.
And so obviously you have a vertical also stance, so it is possible. It's also possible to adapt, and it's known by boxers. So these small adaptations make a big difference, right? Because if you are bending forward, you're bringing the weight forward, so your freezing will also be worse. If you have one foot in the other, you are less balanced. So it's details like this that sometimes really increase the discomfort and people feeling unsafe.
Yeah, so in fact, I don't go to the gym in Stockholm anymore for a number of reasons. Not since I've started using a walker outside, because I don't mind stairs, but there's nowhere to put my walker when I go downstairs into the gym, which is a sort of a structural issue in terms of logistics in this. And also that they are more boxers than they are Parkinson's knowledgeable. So which to me, when with what I want to optimize for myself, is not the right fit right now. So
Right.
currently, of course, they closed down as well during the pandemic. But now I actually attend a weekly online class with people from around the world, actually, for mixed training with boxing included.
Yeah, actually, somebody was talking about that. There are Rocksteady boxing classes online. There are other boxing classes online. You could definitely check those out. And we'll share some links as well. John, it looked like you were going to jump in. Were you going to say something?
But just to say that as they're talking about the stance and, whether it's 1 foot or the other, or we often just do match because it gives us better rotation and posture. As a speech therapist, how many times I've gone into a class and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're all, punching sides of meat and we're all, and it's really very vocally abusive. So I always just try to get people to like, hey, you can use a louder voice and you don't have to grind your vocal folds together. So I'm just out there in boxing land, more air, less tension. If it sounds like, if you're Rocky Balboa, then you're kind of doing it wrong because he's got a lot of great qualities, but his voice is not where I'm heading when I'm trying to improve your ability to communicate. Many other places he's great. I want to be careful, but I want to say often I see the same kind of thing when we get in this position and we maybe get 1 foot forward and all that kind of stuff. It happens to the voice as well.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Someone says we sing a lot in our RSB class. Oh,
that's good. Yeah. I think singing's great. I think I saw it in a spin class too that you guys go to, and it was like that's a great way to add some stuff. And it's hard to sing with like tension.
That's true.
You're singing.
Right. So we have so many comments in here. I would love it if you all could throw your questions if you have any questions. A lot of comments in here. We run a Rocksteady class 5 days a week, but several times a month. We try to include other things like dancing and yoga. RSB customizes to individual needs. Let's see, John, what were you talking about? The gyms in Denver? What was it?
It's called Power Punch for Parkinson's. And the only one I know of in Denver, and I'm sure there's more than one now, was the one at the Denver Red Shield. And that's where it started with Anthony Mora working with Rick Schwartz. But I know that a friend of ours, Emily Muncheski, teaches one down in in Colorado Springs. I believe Bob Walton was teaching one for a long time up in the Fort Collins area. So I think we'll have to look around, but there are a number of them around. I actually don't think there are a ton of Rocksteady, but there might be a couple out there by now. There weren't when I left like 4 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I'm surprised there isn't one.
And that one at Center in Boulder is excellent. Again, they train a lot of Olympic athletes, and Christine, I'm afraid I'm going to forget the other name, but they're so strong on their educational side. I really loved it. Really
strong. They really are pretty amazing ladies. Yes, boxing at home. So that is something. So Lee put up the link about how to find a Rocksteady boxing class. So you could go there and then look at the places in your area. And you can also look online for Rocksteady Boxing online and go to YouTube and just search through YouTube. There are actually some classes. I mean, I would highly recommend that now that we're opening up to the chance of opening up, either work with your physical therapist or at a Rocksteady Boxing class. Those initial sessions, I think, are important for you to understand what's good to do, what's not great to do, and how it's different for people with Parkinson's. Somebody says, I'm newly diagnosed. Rocksteady Boxing is taught with our Parkinson's group online with Zoom. How will this work without gloves?
So if you do it online, you don't need gloves.
You're just punching the air.
Yeah.
Exercise, right?
Yeah, and you could, I mean, technically you could get a bag like the bag you have in your fake background, right, Josefa? You could get a bag.
Yeah, you can get a bag. You can also just
get a soft one so you get the impact, right? If it's too hard, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
One thing that is good with gloves is they also add a bit of weight to your hands. So that's added weight, but you don't need them for online really.
Right.
Yeah. I would want to make a suggestion, which is also challenge, your health professionals to try it out, because there's also some resistance there, and it's a pity. Again, our convictions as professionals, and I think if there's a key message here, it's like boxing in the community is important as an ongoing strategy for exercise. But if we do use it in our therapy, it makes it much richer. It doesn't mean I'm always doing boxing, but I can really use boxing to highlight even all the amplitude, the speed, the aerobic. And it's not rocket science. My key message to my fellow colleagues, it's not rocket science. If you took other courses, you can take this. It's learning a bunch of movements and that's it. I don't want to reduce it, but I don't think that people should say, oh, it's because I don't know it.
Right.
It shouldn't be a limitation.
Yeah, someone said who would
100%.
contact about trying to bring rock steady boxing to our area, PT and neurologist. I would definitely start with PTs in your area to rock steady boxing trainings are happening all the time. You could definitely talk to somebody about that. And like John said, there are other organizations too. I'm just most familiar with rock steady boxing, but there are lots of other organizations you could check out. You can put, someone said,
I think they're doing the training online now too. I believe Rock Steady Boxing has a program that you can do over the internet. I would start with Rock Steady Boxing themselves because they have just so many affiliates. You may not be aware of the affiliate that's nearby, and they might point to somebody. If not, then you can start talking to your professionals and get your PT involved one way or another, and your speech therapist for that matter. I mean, right. I really enjoyed the process. It was great.
Yes, someone says you can put a pillow on a chair for online boxing. Wearing boxing glove increases the cool factor. Agreed.
Definitely, yeah. especially if they're pink and fluffy like Josefa.
Yeah, wait, show yours. Yes, pink and like look a little sparkly. I'm not sure.
Pink and sparkly, yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
No, I actually
got from Marva.
These are from kickboxing because it allows you to keep your finger, so in case you need something, it's more practical. Yeah. But it could also be more dangerous. But
we gotta highlight that, guys. I think that's something to be careful of, is that you want to be sure that when you're doing this, that you have people that are giving you the right protective equipment. I've had a number of patients that have gone into something and had a shoulder issue or something here, or came out and said, afterwards I got done, and it's like I had to nap for 4 hours. And it's like, I've done a lot of exercise in my life, but if I have to nap for 4 hours, I'm not probably not going to do that one again.
Right. And
right?
yeah, that brings us to a great point around the safety and sort of expectations as you're doing this. So what do you think is important for, let's say, somebody who hears that a boxing gym, not necessarily a rock steady boxing, maybe a rock steady boxing place or something like that? What are some questions to ask the coach to make sure that they understand what they're doing and you're going to get a good, safe class?
So I would say you could go and watch a class before you join yourself to see what it's like and see if it seems safe, if the coach seems to know what people are doing and can support them in a good way.
That's a great idea.
That's great.
You know, we are struggling at this moment to find out like inclusion criteria as whoever is delivering it. How do we include people? How do we separate people into groups? So we don't have the right answer at this moment. There is highlighting the recommendation that obviously earlier stages will probably benefit more. But I think so it's a challenge to get those right questions if we don't know why are people joining, why are people dropping out. And so actually I did a social experience last week. Experiment, that's what I would call it. There's no way we can publish this stuff, but it was just a simple question on Facebook, and I want to thank everyone that answered, trying to understand why people drop out, because this was actually one of the limitations in the study that we published. We had no reason why people were dropping out. So the program, 18 months after, we had 40 people that were in the program, but everyone that was lost, it wasn't the same people that entered. We didn't know why. Why do people go out? And so I just asked a simple question on social media, on Facebook, just to get a glimpse of what people are saying besides the experience that I've had. And obviously the results are really in line of the safety issues, the injuries in the shoulder, in the hands. With the hands was a particularly interesting one. And then transportation was a limitation as well. Costs was another issue that came up often as well. So I think
in the case of Stockholm as well, we had that very, very narrow and very steep staircase.
Yes, which was one of our adverse events, which was a black staircase all the way down. And people with Parkinson don't usually have difficulties in stairs, right?
With
It's
no
not,
contrast, no contrast on the steps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
so
black
that's
hole.
so if you find a gym, it's actually a good idea to maybe do a little reconnaissance with somebody, maybe your care partner or a friend, and drive over there and see what you're looking at in terms of getting into the place and the parking and all of those kinds of things. The other thing to do, like Sarah was saying, if you go and you want to observe a class, it would be really helpful if you could say to the coach, hey, I want to observe this class. I'm interested in it, but I just want to see how it goes. Maybe, and then maybe the coach could kind of announce to the group, hey, there's somebody here watching. She would love, or he would love to talk to you if you're open to talking about your experience after the class. And then you could talk to some people, maybe to various ages, various abilities, and you get a chance to talk to those people about their experience in that gym. And they'll probably also tell you about, if they live in a bigger city, about other gyms they've been to and why they're at this gym. And you can get a lot of great information with that. Someone says, I use gloves in the shadow boxing portion of my Zoom RSB class as added weight, among other things, but our participants are all boxers who are in our gym class pre-COVID. Okay. Rocksteady Boxing promotes an exercise protocol called forced intense exercise, which helps delay the onset of PD symptoms. And well, how is this forced intense? How is boxing forced intense? It's just intense.
Yeah, I'd say it's a high intensity, not forced use per se.
Right. Okay. Boxing is great. You need to stress you have to learn the correct form to throw the punch, or you will have shoulder injuries and wrist injuries. Yes, completely. Atlanta, we're fortunate to have the resource of boxingforparkinsons.org. They offer different levels of PD boxing, yoga, and optimizing classes in person and virtual. So you could probably check those out if they're offering them virtually.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that group, so that's cool.
Boxing.
I'll check it out.
Parkinsons.org. Each station should have a safe exit, chair to sit on, balance bars to grab, etc. Yeah, so those are good things to think about when you go visit some sessions. Oh, Pete. Hi, Pete. I'm so glad you're here. I know Pete's a big boxer. He says Rocksteady uses a standardized assessment to determine level and then does assessments at every 6 months to gauge improvement. That's great. Probably built into their train the trainer curriculum. And somebody says we have all potential boxers watch our class, speak with at least one of our current members, and undergo a full assessment prior to becoming a member. That's great. That's, very sort of peace of mind for people who are interested. If you walk into a Rocksteady boxing gym, the chances of you getting an assessment and making sure that things are safe is great. And please, if you are on this and you're not Rocksteady boxing, but you're somewhere else, please feel free to put the organization that you work for, and so that we can share those.
Yeah, I would just like to highlight a point about the assessments, because we can do as many assessments as we want. It's the fluctuating characteristics of Parkinson make it increase the need of us to gain this expertise. And expertise is based on experience, right? So if no matter who's delivering it, if you have a certain amount of time working with people with Parkinson, you will learn. Right, you will get that, and at least until the research catches up and can guide us better, right? But it's important for the assessments that you do in the day, in the hour, right? And I think we have to be mindful of that, because I can give you an example of someone that I was following in our boxing class last week, and I was understanding that he was hyperactive for some reason, but only because I took him home did I realize that he had taken double his medication. By mistake, right? So where do we assess these things? It's really about if we can have time. We need time with people. So it's if you have 40 people, it's going to be very difficult to do that.
Right. Yeah, and I think you make a point. I mean, people's Parkinson's change from day to day. So it's just having that awareness and being able to notice things that you'll get better at with time. The more classes you teach, the more people that you have, you'll get that.
So I'd say the baseline is if you, at the end of each class, if you have learned something, that's the criteria if you are growing in terms of expertise. So even though I've been doing this for some time, in every single class, there's a learning point. This was my learning point from last week. It's like, why didn't I go and ask him why was he so agitated? And you see, we learn something. It's all based on error, right? The learning point. So.
Speaking of learning, I'm not sure if you've had this on your programs before, Mel, or not, but Josefa also has this bouncing for Parkinson's.
Bouncing?
Oh,
Yeah, trampolines. Bounce.
Oh, we don't have that yet. Just
Well, we tried the boxing.
We've done boxing and
Yeah.
bouncing at the same time.
yeah, that's great.
No, but actually, that's the best thing I've ever had for my freezing of gait.
Is the bouncing?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good to know for everybody else watching.
Yeah.
Just for
totally
people-
amazing to watch.
people are saying they pay $80 a month for $80 a month for 12 sessions per month. Some people $50, 3 videos a week. So it's going to vary. It's also going to vary by community and city and that kind of thing. One person just said, okay, this is the tip that I think is a very great point to end on. I always feel better after leaving my Rocksteady boxing class and when I came in. And I think that one of the things that we certainly hear at the Davis Phinney Foundation is how much community, how important the community is. And people, no one's really talking about how they miss the boxing or the punching. They're missing all their friends at Rocksteady Boxing. So I think it's definitely spoken to that aspect of how important connection is. To people with Parkinson's, and this is a great way to do it in a fun environment, and you can watch people grow and advance and reduce their symptoms and still stay active as their Parkinson's progresses.
I'd say even though we promote that it should be more specific to the needs, right? So you should have exercises that are approaching your specific problems. I think we should be careful to never change the environment of enjoyment. And so let's not make this clinic. It's not a clinic. So I think we have to be mindful of that, because that's why people are going there. So they're not reminded that they have Parkinson's.
Yeah, they don't have it for that period, right?
Yeah, no. I can train everything I want as a physiotherapist, and I don't have to be reinforcing that the person has a disease.
Right. Oh, Angie's here, and she says, I would love to do bouncing in Michigan. Yes. All right, Josefa, you
Find
have
it, we will come. We'll come there and do it.
It's just like boxing. We're still breaking, we're still getting evidence.
Remember all those years ago, Josefa, when we talked about bouncy castles in the yard of the clinic? Here we are.
Could make that work.
No, but there's always a ways around it, right?
Yeah.
I think the bouncing is better than the bouncy castle.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. It's walking on trampolines. It's not so much about the bouncing.
No,
It's about the positive information that you're getting, the balance training, the very intensive balance training that you're getting.
And feedback to your feet and joints and everything, and that really reduces my freezing and improves my gait.
That is really great. Are there any such classes like that online, Josefa? No.
Regarding the bouncing?
Yeah.
No. It's a pilot program that we are testing, so it's
okay, good. Well, you heard it here first. Good.
Yeah, let me get some camera equipment for Josefa and we'll get together.
I have my own small trampoline at home, so we can do it online.
So Bailey says, our programs are all free if you're ever on Vancouver Island, Parkinson's Wellness Project.
Maybe Jill.
Of course.
wow,
Great.
that's awesome.
Jillian Ames Carson, yeah. Who's
Oh,
a physiotherapist.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a
Parkinson's
physiotherapist
disease.
by training.
With Parkinson's.
With
disease,
Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Great.
She's great. That's a great nonprofit up there.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have a lot of links, and we will share them all in the post email, along with the recording, along with the audio, the video, the transcript. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at blog@dpf.org. Thank you so much, Josefa and John and Sarah, for being here today. We really appreciate it. I know a lot of people could talk about this forever, and boxing has big fans. So thanks so much for sharing all your expertise.